What happens when the person you trust most becomes your worst enemy? Today's story will leave you speechless. A betrayal so deep, a revenge so perfect, you won't believe what happens next. If you love stories of karma and justice, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss what happens in this one. Trust me, this is the kind of story that will have you on the edge of your seat until the very last second. My name is Marcus, and 3 years ago, I had everything a man could want: a successful tech company worth millions, a beautiful wife named Victoria, and a best friend since college, Derek, who I trusted with my life. I'm talking about the kind of trust where you give someone your passwords, your bank account access, the keys to everything you own. That level of trust. Derek wasn't just my friend, he was my business partner, my brother from another mother. We met freshman year at MIT. Two broke kids with big dreams and even bigger ambitions. We built our software company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks in my garage, living on instant ramen and dreams. I'm talking about sleeping on air mattresses, sharing one beat-up Honda Civic, maxing out credit cards to keep the servers running. We laughed together, cried together, celebrated every milestone together. When we landed our first major client, we literally jumped up and down, screaming like kids. That's how close we were. Victoria came into my life during our first successful year. We had just hit our first $1 million in revenue, and we needed someone who actually understood marketing. She walked into our shabby office in a designer suit, looking completely out of place among our pizza boxes and energy drink cans. She was a marketing consultant we hired, and I fell hard. She was ambitious, smart, and gorgeous. Her ideas transformed our brand overnight. She looked at our amateur website and said, "This looks like it was made in 1995. Let me fix this." Within 3 months, she had tripled our customer base. Within a year, we were married in a ceremony where Derek stood as my best man, tears in his eyes, as he gave a speech about brotherhood and love. He talked about how I was the brother he never had, how he would do anything for me. Victoria cried. I cried. It was perfect. Life was perfect. The company was growing exponentially. We had just secured $15 million in Series B funding from some of the biggest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. Victoria managed our marketing division brilliantly, tripling our customer base within 18 months. Derek handled operations while I focused on development. We were a dream team, unstoppable, heading toward a $100 million valuation. Tech magazines were writing articles about us. We were invited to speak at conferences. We were living the dream that every entrepreneur fantasizes about. But you know what they say about things that seem too perfect, right? There's always something lurking beneath the surface. It started small. Little things I ignored because I trusted them both completely. Derek started taking longer lunch breaks, sometimes disappearing for 2 or 3 hours. When I asked where he went, he'd say he was meeting with vendors or potential clients. Victoria's phone was suddenly always face down on tables. Before, she used to show me every funny meme, every interesting article. Now, her phone was like classified information. Late-night emergency meetings became frequent. "Oh, we need to fix this marketing campaign." "Oh, Derek and I need to review the quarterly numbers." I trusted them, so I didn't question it. Whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered rooms. Victoria would be laughing on the phone, then suddenly go silent when I walked in, saying, "I'll call you back." But I was too focused on launching our new product to notice the pattern. I was working 16-hour days, trying to perfect our software before the launch. I trusted them. That was my biggest mistake. That was the mistake that almost destroyed me. Then came the business trip to Miami for the Tech Innovation Conference, one of the biggest events in our industry. I was supposed to go with Derek. We had planned it months in advance, booked our flights together, even joked about hitting South Beach after the conference sessions. But at the last minute, 3 days before we were supposed to leave, a critical bug appeared in our system. I'm talking about a bug that could have crashed everything, lost us all our data, destroyed our reputation. Our biggest client, a Fortune 500 company, was threatening to pull their contract if we didn't fix it immediately. Derek said he could handle the conference alone. "You stay and fix the bug," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "I'll represent us in Miami. Don't worry, brother. I got this." I was grateful. I thought he was being a good friend, taking one for the team. Derek went alone, or so I thought. 2 days into the conference, I fixed the bug earlier than expected. I had been working non-stop for 48 hours, barely sleeping, living on coffee and determination. When I finally solved it at 3 in the morning, I felt like a champion. I decided to surprise Derek. I booked a late flight to Miami, imagining us celebrating together at some beachfront bar, ordering expensive whiskey to celebrate both the bug fix and whatever deals he had closed at the conference. I texted him asking which hotel he was at. He replied quickly, too quickly in hindsight, the Fontainebleau, room 1847. He added, "What's up? Everything okay with the system?" I just replied, "All good. Talk later." I arrived at midnight, exhausted but excited. The Miami heat hit me as I stepped out of the airport, and I grabbed an Uber to the hotel. The Fontainebleau is gorgeous. One of those iconic Miami beach hotels with the massive pools and ocean views. I walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the 18th floor, feeling like everything in my life was finally falling into place. I knocked on room 1847. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I called Derek's phone. It rang inside the room. I could hear it clearly through the door, but no one picked up. That's when I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter. Victoria's laughter. That specific laugh she does when she's really enjoying herself. The one I used to love hearing, coming from inside Derek's hotel room. My heart stopped. Time seemed to freeze. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she had flown down for a surprise too. Maybe they were planning something for me, a surprise party or a celebration. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent reason why my wife was in my best friend's hotel room at midnight. My hand shook as I knocked again, harder this time, loud enough that they couldn't ignore it. Derek opened the door wearing only a hotel robe. His hair was messy. He smelled like expensive perfume. Behind him, I could see Victoria sitting on the bed, wrapped in sheets, wearing what was clearly his shirt. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, her face going from relaxed to absolutely pale as she saw me standing there in the doorway. The look in Derek's eyes said everything. Not guilt, not shame, not surprise, just annoyance. Pure annoyance. Like I was interrupting something important, like I was the problem. I stood there frozen, my carry-on bag still in my hand, unable to process what I was seeing. My wife, my best friend, in a hotel room, together, half-dressed. At midnight, Derek sighed, actually sighed like I was inconveniencing him, and said the words that still echo in my mind every single day. "Marcus, man, we didn't want you to find out this way." As if there was a good way to find out about betrayal. As if there was a correct method to discover your entire life was a lie. Victoria started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. I know the difference. These were tears of frustration, of someone caught in the act, of someone annoyed that their secret was out. She said they had fallen in love, that it just happened, that they tried to fight it but couldn't. All the classic lines that cheaters use. It just happened, as if betrayal is something that just accidentally occurs, like tripping over a rock. I asked the only question that mattered, the only question I could form with my mouth. How long? Derek looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at the floor. The silence lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Then Derek said, with almost no emotion in his voice, 2 years. 2 years. Let that sink in. 2 years. while I worked day and night building our dream, while I trusted him with every business decision, gave him access to everything, treated him like family, while I loved Victoria with everything I had, planning our future, talking about kids, looking at bigger houses. They had been together for 2 years, 2 years of lies, 2 years of secret meetings, 2 years of them laughing at me behind my back. Every business trip Derek took, every late-night marketing meeting Victoria had, every time they said they were working on a project together, it was all a lie. I asked when it started. Victoria finally spoke, her voice shaking. "Remember that weekend you went to your parents for your dad's surgery? We were working late at the office, and it just happened." My dad's surgery. I had flown to Chicago to be with my father during his heart surgery, one of the scariest moments of my life. And while I was there, holding my mother's hand in a hospital waiting room, praying my father would survive, they were back home, starting an affair. I left that hotel room in a daze. I didn't yell, I didn't fight, I didn't break anything. I just walked out into the Miami night, feeling like my entire world had collapsed, like the ground had opened up beneath my feet. Everything I believed in, everything I thought was real, everything I had built my life on, had been a lie. I walked along the beach for hours, watching the waves, feeling completely numb. I flew back home that night, taking a red-eye at 4 in the morning. By the time the plane landed, by the time the sun was rising over the city, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to beg or cry or make a scene. I was going to make them pay, but not with violence, not with drama, not with anything that could come back on me legally or professionally, with something far more devastating, with the truth strategically revealed, with patience, with precision. First, I hired the best divorce attorney in the state, a woman named Patricia Chen, who had a reputation for absolutely destroying cheating spouses in court. She was expensive, charging $500 an hour, but she was worth every penny. Then I hired a forensic accountant, a former FBI financial crimes investigator, then a private investigator, an ex-cop who specialized in infidelity cases. I told no one about what I had discovered, not my parents. Not our employees, not our investors, nobody. At work, I acted normal. I smiled at Derek. I joked with him. I reviewed reports with Victoria. At home, I pretended everything was fine. I slept in the same bed as Victoria, even though it made my skin crawl. Victoria thought I was in denial, that I was too weak to face reality. Derek thought I was too weak to confront them, that I was going to just accept it and move on. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. The private investigator's report came back in 2 weeks. It was a thick folder, over 100 pages, with detailed evidence of their affair, hotel receipts from 15 different hotels across 3 states, restaurant bills from expensive places I couldn't afford, photographs of them holding hands on the street, kissing in parking garages, entering and leaving hotels together. Even a weekend trip to Napa Valley they had taken while I was at a tech summit in Austin, supposedly to visit wineries and taste wine. They had used company money for that trip, claiming it was a business development meeting. There were text messages the investigator had recovered, messages that made me sick to read, messages where they talked about me like I was stupid, like I was a fool. Derek calling me clueless, Victoria saying I was too focused on work to notice anything. But that wasn't the interesting part. That wasn't the part that made me smile when I read it. The interesting part was what the forensic accountant found. Derek had been stealing from the company, systematically, methodically, small amounts at first, a few hundred here and there, testing to see if anyone would notice. Then larger sums. Over 2 years, he had embezzled nearly $300,000 through fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports. Money he had used to wine and dine my wife, to take her on romantic getaways, to buy her expensive jewelry that she told me she bought herself. The forensic accountant laid it all out in a spreadsheet. Every fake invoice, every inflated expense, every fraudulent vendor payment that went to an account Derek controlled. $300,000 of my money, stolen to fund an affair with my wife. My wife and my best friend hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They had been robbing me blind. They had literally been stealing from me to fund their relationship. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where I became someone I didn't know I could be. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I played the long game. I played chess while they were playing checkers. I scheduled a board meeting to discuss expanding the company. This wasn't unusual. We had board meetings every quarter. I invited our investors, our legal team, and our accountants. Derek had no idea what was coming. He walked into the office that morning whistling. Actually whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. Victoria wasn't even invited since it was specifically an operations and finance meeting, not marketing. The night before the meeting, at exactly 8 p.m., I had my attorney serve Victoria with divorce papers. A process server showed up at our house while she was watching TV, handed her the documents, and left. She called me immediately, crying, begging to talk, saying we could work through this, that she made a mistake. I told her my lawyer would handle everything. Then I blocked her number, I blocked her email, I blocked her on every social media platform. I wanted her to feel what I felt, abandoned, cut off, alone. The next morning, Derek walked into the conference room, confident and smiling. He poured himself coffee from the carafe on the table. He made small talk with the investors about the latest tech news. He had no idea that the private investigator's report and the forensic accountant's findings were already in folders in front of every board member. He had no idea that the lawyer sitting at the end of the table wasn't our usual corporate counsel. I started the meeting simply, calmly. I looked Derek right in the eyes and said, "Gentlemen, before we discuss expansion, we need to address a serious matter. Derek has been embezzling company funds." His face went white, not pale. White, like all the blood drained out of his body. His coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. He started to deny it, his voice cracking. "What? Marcus, what are you talking about? This is crazy." But I played the audio recording from my Miami hotel encounter, his own voice admitting to the 2-year affair, Victoria's voice in the background. Then I presented the financial evidence. Bank records showing transfers to his personal accounts. Fake invoices from companies that didn't exist. Expense reports for business trips that never happened. Everything, every single piece of evidence, all laid out in color-coded spreadsheets and bank statements. The room went silent. You could hear people breathing. One of our investors, a former federal prosecutor named Richard Wade, looked at Derek with cold, dead eyes and said, "You have 2 options. You resign immediately, sign over your shares for $1, and hope we don't press criminal charges. Or we call the police right now and you leave here in handcuffs. You have 60 seconds to decide." Derek tried to argue. He tried to explain. "This is a misunderstanding. Marcus is upset about personal issues. He's confused." But the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic accountant, a woman named Sarah, who looked like someone's grandmother but had the analytical skills of a supercomputer, calmly walked through every fraudulent transaction. She showed how the money left our accounts, moved through shell companies, and ended up in Derek's personal accounts. She showed photos of him depositing checks. It was airtight, undeniable. Within an hour, he had signed everything. His 50% stake in a company worth $40 million, gone for a single dollar, $20 million worth of shares, signed away for the price of a candy bar. He walked out of that building with nothing but his car keys and his phone. Security escorted him out like a criminal. Everyone in the office watched. People he had worked with for years, people who trusted him, people who considered him a friend. They all watched him leave in shame, but I wasn't done. Not even close. Victoria thought she would get half of everything in the divorce. She had already hired an expensive attorney, some hotshot who specialized in high-asset divorces, ready to fight for her 50% of everything I owned. What she didn't know was that I had evidence of her knowledge of Derek's embezzlement. Text messages where she suggested ways he could hide the money. Be careful with the amounts, don't make them too obvious. Messages where she encouraged him to create fake vendors. Make up a consulting company, it's harder to trace. Under state law, that made her complicit in fraud. That made her an accessory to embezzlement. My attorney presented her expensive lawyer with a choice. Sign a settlement taking nothing but her personal belongings, the clothes in her closet and her car, or face criminal conspiracy charges alongside Derek. She could walk away with nothing, or she could walk away with nothing and a criminal record. She signed within 24 hours. She walked away from our marriage with the clothes in her closet, her car, and about $5,000 she had in her personal bank account. That's it. No alimony, no property settlement, nothing. The house, the investments, the savings, everything stayed with me. But karma wasn't finished with them yet. The universe wasn't done balancing the scales. Remember how Derek lost his shares? The company's value had been based on projected earnings from our new product launch. The product I had designed. The product I had spent 3 years perfecting. The week after Derek was forced out, after Victoria signed the divorce papers, I made a decision that shocked everyone in the industry. I sold the company. A major tech corporation, one of the biggest in the world, had been trying to acquire us for months. They saw the potential in our software. They knew what we could become. I had always refused their offers. I loved the company. I loved being independent. But now I accepted their offer. $65 million. Cash. And since Derek had signed over his shares for $1, he got nothing, not a penny, not a fraction of a penny, zero. The employees got generous severance packages. Everyone who had worked hard and been loyal got paid. The investors made a fortune, tripling their money. I walked away with $32 million after taxes. Derek got to watch from the sidelines as the company he helped build, the company he had spent 7 years working on, made everyone rich. Everyone except him. He got to read about it in the tech news. He got to see his former colleagues posting on social media about their payouts, and he got nothing. Victoria tried to come back. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, she showed up at my new apartment at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. She was crying, her makeup running, saying she had made a mistake, that she loved me, that Derek had manipulated her, that she was confused, that we could start over. She said Derek had dumped her the moment he realized he wasn't getting any money. She said she was sorry. She begged. She actually got on her knees on my doorstep and begged. I looked at her for a long moment. I remembered the woman I had loved. I remembered our wedding day. I remembered all the dreams we had shared. Then I remembered her in Derek's hotel room. I remembered the 2 years of lies. I remembered how they laughed at me behind my back. I closed the door in her face without saying a word. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just closed the door and walked back to my couch. I heard her crying outside for about 10 minutes. Then she left. I never saw her again. Then the real karma hit. The kind of karma you can't plan for. The kind that just happens. Derek, desperate and broke, tried to start his own company. He had 7 years of experience in operations. He had contacts. He had skills. He thought he could rebuild. But word had spread in the tech community about what he had done. Our industry is small. Everyone talks. No investor would touch him. No talented developer would work with him. His reputation was completely destroyed. He tried to raise money for his startup, but the moment investors Googled his name, they found the articles about the embezzlement. They found the court records. They found everything. He ended up taking a middle management job at a mid-tier company making $70,000 a year. That's not bad for most people, but remember, he had been making $300,000 a year plus equity. He went from being a multi-millionaire on paper to barely getting by. Last I heard, he's still paying off the legal fees from when the company decided to press charges after all. Turns out, they found even more evidence of embezzlement after he left. Hidden accounts, more fake vendors. The total ended up being closer to $500,000. He spent 6 months in prison for wire fraud, 6 months in an actual prison, wearing an orange jumpsuit, eating terrible food, sharing a cell with someone who didn't care about his Stanford MBA, Victoria. She tried to rebuild her career in marketing, reaching out to old clients and contacts, trying to get freelance work. But our industry is small. Everyone knew what happened. Clients didn't want to work with someone known for sleeping with her boss's business partner while stealing company money. Her reputation was ruined. She couldn't get hired anywhere reputable. She moved to another state, trying to start over with a new name in a new market. I heard she's working at some small marketing agency now, making a fraction of what she used to make, living in a studio apartment, driving a 10-year-old car. As for me, I took a year off after the sale. I traveled the world. I went to Japan and stayed in traditional ryokans. I hiked through New Zealand. I spent a month in Italy, learning to make pasta from nonnas in small villages. I went to therapy and processed everything that had happened. I healed. I learned to trust again, slowly. Then I started a new company, this time being more careful about who I trusted, doing thorough background checks, watching for red flags, keeping my personal and professional lives more separate. And you know what? I'm happier than I ever was before. My new company is thriving. We just closed a $10 million Series A round. I have a team of people I actually trust. And I'm engaged to someone who actually deserves my trust, someone who showed me what real love looks like, someone who was patient with me while I learned to open up again. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Betrayal feels like the end of the world when it happens. It feels like you'll never recover. It feels like you'll never trust anyone again. But sometimes karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales. You just have to be patient and strategic enough to let it happen. You have to play the long game. You have to think 10 steps ahead. Derek and Victoria destroyed themselves. I just gave them the rope. I just made sure the truth came out at the right time, in the right way, to the right people. Everything else, the way their lives fell apart, that was their own doing. They made the choices that destroyed them. I just made sure those choices had consequences. 3 years later, I'm engaged to someone who actually deserves my trust. Someone who tells me the truth even when it's hard. Someone who supports my dreams without trying to steal from me. My new company is thriving, growing faster than the first one ever did. I sleep well at night, knowing that the people who betrayed me are living with the consequences of their choices every single day. Derek wakes up every morning and goes to a job he hates, knowing he threw away everything for an affair. Victoria wakes up alone in her studio apartment, knowing she destroyed a good marriage for someone who abandoned her the moment things got hard. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to others. It's living well while they suffer the natural consequences of their own actions. That's real karma. And let me tell you, watching it unfold was more satisfying than any revenge I could have planned, more satisfying than anything I could have done to them directly, because they have to live with themselves. They have to look in the mirror every day, knowing what they did, knowing what they lost, knowing it was their own fault. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell because I post new stories of betrayal, revenge, and karma every week. Stories that will make you think, stories that will make you feel something, stories that show how the universe always finds a way to balance things out. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have been as patient as I was, or would you have confronted them immediately? Would you have gone to the police right away, or would you have played the long game like I did? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know if you think I did the right thing, or if you would have handled it differently. Thanks for watching. And remember, what goes around always comes back around. Always. Karma never forgets. It might take time, it might take years, but eventually everyone gets exactly what they deserve. The universe has a way of making things right. You would have done in my situation. Would you have been as patient as I was, or would you have confronted them immediately? I want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and remember, what goes around always comes back around. Always.